All right, so we are back, and now this is going to be just kind of a quick um, demonstration of the assignment. Oh, yes, problem. A problem that you had. And Tabra says, no problem. So that's the way we like. Problem solved. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the assignment. You are going to create, well, let's do it in the classroom actually. Let's go over it here. There is a little bit of background information that talks about communicating and not instead of decorating, and finding support in the grid, just some principles that you can think about. And we're gonna kind of, this assignment to me is kind of a mix between all of the other assignments that you've had. You can only use type, so you have to make something interesting. In other words, like when you created the type portrait, right? So remember the things that you learned from that. The type is just shapes. Letters are just shapes. You can do cool things with them. Then also you learned about the 19 rules of type, and you're going to pick one rule on this poster to present in this poster. So that's included there. And then organizing text so that it kind of makes sense again, just like we did in the wedding announcement. But then also creating some kind of hierarchy and interest so that it becomes something that's visually interesting to look at. This is not meant to be a page, a paragraph page in a magazine like the one that you did for the assessment. This is meant to be something that grabs people's attention and that they want to be interested in and walk up to and see what's going on, okay? Separate list of the 19 rules of type, absolutely. Let's take a look at the prompt. Kind of like I just mentioned, you are going to create a typographical poster and you're going to choose one of the rules. If you go down here, download, and I hope this download works. I know some of you seem to have problems with the download last week. So I can put it up as an attachment in the announcement too, just to make sure. But if you open up this Word document, it has all of the type rules listed here separately, okay? So you can just copy and paste from here to use it on your poster, okay? But you want to be creative, right? You want this poster to be interesting and engaging, not just a page layout. You want to use a grid, but you also want to break out of the grid to make something feel interesting. And think about how you're placing each one of the elements, maybe abstract some of the letter forms or numbers, kind of like you did in the portrait, so that, you know, they feel more like a pattern or just a shape rather than something that has to be read. There are some instructions that you have to follow. You have to have the rule and the number listed on there. And then you should keep the paragraph text that covers the rule and not change it. So you need to have all that whole paragraph in there, whatever rule you decide to use. But there are parts of it that you could emphasize or repeat or do something different with if you want to. You want to create some kind of graphic element from the type or simple shapes, like you can use punctuation marks and things like that. You could use a square if you want to, or a circle, something simple like that. But it shouldn't rely on that. You should use the type more than anything, okay? And you want it to create interest and emphasis. And if you are able to somehow implement the function of the rule in an interesting way so that it becomes kind of an interesting concept as well, that is really, you know, kind of a icing on the cake for this poster. You can only use typed characters, again, no illustrations or images. And I encourage you to start with a grid, because if you start with a grid, then you can also break out of that grid, and that can help you create some interesting things. To help you, there is an InDesign grid and an Illustrator grid that you can download and start from if you want to, but you can also create your own. And then at the bottom, you need to put the source for the text, and you can just copy this. That's written right here, okay? That part right there as your credit. You can use Illustrator or InDesign, it's up to you. The size is 11 by 17, but you want to use the tabloid format. So we want it to be long and skinny because that's usually the poster format. And you can use color on this as well. And then you want to save your native file just for yourself so that you can use it for any kind of revisions you might want to do for your portfolio, and then submit a PDF version. Okay? And then when your submission, you're just going to submit the PDF, but you also want to save it as a JPEG so that you can put it on your Behance portfolio page, and then email your FPA with a copy to me, telling them to take a look at your Behance piece. And you have to copy me in there to get full credit on the Behance upload, because I won't know that you have emailed it to your FPA if you don't copy that in there. Copy me in it. If I'm your FPA, I guess that's all you have to send there. And I would also like you to put the URL of your Behance site into the comments of the assignment, so that I can just go to it right there as well. And that gives me kind of a double check on that it got uploaded to Behance. One thing I will remind you of, that when you are sending that link to your FPA, don't just send a link. It's really not good manners or good practice to just send a link to somebody. I hope that if you get emails that you don't know who it's from, or you're questioning who it's from, and it's only a link, that you don't click on those, right? Because why? Why would you not just want to click on a link that you get from someone? Yeah, that's how you get viruses. That's usually spam, scam, mail, all of that kind of stuff. So you want to get into a good habit that if you're actually sending a link to somebody, you want to introduce yourself and what that link is for. You want to say, hi, this is me. In my class, I was told to send a link. This is my final project in my typography class. I would love some feedback from you, and then put the link in there and then sign with your name. That's how an email should be sent. Never send just a link. And I will tell you, as an FPA myself, if a student just sends me a link, I reply back to them and I say, I don't open just a link being sent to me. I need to know who this is and why you are sending me this link before I open it. So I try to get my students to practice good email etiquette when it comes to this. And many times you will also know that your email might not show your name. It might just show up as whatever your email is, or some kind of nickname that you've put on it. So a person might not know even who it is that's sending it, right? So make sure that you do that. Okay, I've got 5 minutes to show you guys, do a little demo of this poster. So let's take a look at the samples, because that can help you as well. So here you see a sample of Rule 10. Oh my goodness, this is not showing up very good. There we go. Okay, so you can see here we got big use of contrast, right? And then this here is just becomes kind of an interesting texture, but that's part of the text that's in here. And here is an example of how short lines are kind of tiring and not so nice. And then this is an example of kind of a nice line length. So there's kind of some things in here that kind of show you what an appropriate line length is. Okay, and then some background, good contrasting colors and things like that. Okay, this other one. Oh, and this other one is actually this way. So I guess it's all right. You can have it either way. You don't have to do the portrait kind. You can do portrait or landscape, up to you. Okay. I stand corrected. We're going to zoom in on that. It doesn't show the whole thing. Okay, but here you can see again, there's a little bit of, you know, they've used a lot of different fonts in here, right? So breaking a rule, but it has a purpose because it is showing examples of italics, underlined, colored, different typeface. So it's kind of putting all of those different concepts into the text, right? So there is a broken rule, but it's still okay for using for this as a poster. And you can see the number 16 in the background right here, kind of for interest, something interesting. Blown up, it's become almost abstracted, but the colors are pretty close in value so that you can still read the text on top of it. Okay, so let's just do a quick demonstration of some ideas, and maybe in the multi-session I can give you guys some more ideas. But you guys just tell me a number between 1 and 19 that we're going to use for our example. And I think we'll probably go over maybe 5-10 minutes if you guys are okay with that. Rule number 2. Oh, 4. Kevin won. First one. Sorry, girls. Okay, first one sticking in there. Okay, so rule number 4, that talks about not putting your text in all caps, but probably a rule that we can break sometimes, right? You guys, several people broke it, but it looked very nice in the invitations, right? So there are instances where that's okay to do. All right, do you guys want to have the demonstration in Illustrator or InDesign? You guys get to pick. You can use whatever you feel most comfortable in. Illustrator might give you a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to do, to not fit a grid, I think, in Illustrator. All right, girls got to pick Illustrator. So we'll open up Illustrator. And I mean, I don't really feel like this needs a lot of demonstration because again, it's your choice of text. So that's going to be different length. It's your choice of program. But I'm just going to give you a few ideas. And you already saw a couple of ideas. So basically what this is going to be is just a third idea, right? So tabloid set right here, 11 by 17. Make sure that that's set there, or you can put in the numbers right here too with the inches. And again, I'm going to let you guys decide, set some of my parameters. Do you think it should be portrait or landscape? You guys are going to set some of the parameters for me. Portrait. Okay. All right, here it is. Okay, I'm not going to update right now. Sorry, guys. I'll have to do that later. All right, so, oh goodness, lots of color panels in here. Take that off for now. All right, so if you're using Illustrator, I would recommend that you set some margins. That will be automatic in your InDesign document. But in Illustrator, it's really the safest way to go is to set some margins so that you don't end up with your text too close to the edges. So you could set that at like 1/2 inch maybe, just pulling out the rulers to make sure that you don't having any proximity issues and items that are too close to the edges, unless of course you want to break out of that grid and have something bleed over the edges, which you can do. You can see this one here had this shape bleed over the edge, and that's kind of what makes it interesting. Oh, did I do 1 inch? Oh, yeah, I did 1 inch margins. Okay, I want to have lots of space, or you can do 1/2 inch, you know, up to you. It doesn't really matter because this is going to be more of a creative thing. So, you know, I can even set two sets of margins if I want to. Kind of use that as part of my grid. If you want to use one of the grids that were in there, you will already have some grid lines built in that will help you align the text. Okay. So now I have my text, and I'm actually going to put the text outside of my artboard so that I can kind of pick it apart a little bit, and because that is going to help me make it a little bit more interesting, right? We can close that. So let's make this a lot bigger so I can see what the text is, and then I can take parts and pieces of this and kind of put it in different text boxes, and that would probably be something that would help you out. So rule 4, okay, maybe I'll have that in a separate text box, and maybe really big. Again, you know, contrast, right? So yeah, you can put it in a text box, but actually let me show you some tips here. Instead of having all of it in a text box, sometimes just something like rule 4, if I just put it here like that and not in a text box, it's going to be a little bit easier for me to manipulate it, because then I can actually just size it with my sizing tool. And I'll hold down Shift, of course, so that it doesn't get distorted. But that way I don't have to kind of try to play and say, okay, how big is going to fill up from margin to margin for me? I can just do it this way. Okay. And then, of course, I would go in and find, you know, probably a more interesting font. That's going to take time, so we're going to do that pretty quickly right now. Scroll through. See what we can find. Maybe that one, kind of interesting, but that made it a lot bigger. Whoops. So I'm going to go in, and now I'm going to use the sizing to bring it in, and I'm going to make it a little tighter. This one has big space between the letters, so I'm going to make it tighter. And then I'm going to go in here, and this is where I can use my kerning, the space between each letter, whoops, less, and make that even closer. Okay, so I'm just moving that closer. Could maybe even like take out the space if I needed to. And I'm going to look at the letters in between here, and they don't feel spaced really nicely. Can you guys see how the R and the U are a lot closer? So this is another place where I would use kerning. And here I would add a little bit of space to make sure that the letters feel a little bit more evenly spaced. And you kind of just have to use your eye to see how that works. Okay, now that feels a little bit better spaced to me. And now if I want it still to go out to the margins, and hold down Shift and I can drag this out until not the box, but the colon and the R, the back of the R, are actually hitting those margins. Because it's not the box that you're going to see when you're done, it's the text itself, right? Okay, so I have rule number 4. Then I'm going to take kind of the name of the rule, and I'm going to have that be like the next thing in my hierarchy. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to, whoops, I'll put that in here and make my own little line break right there. Okay, this is kind of the word of the law right here. I'm going to pull that out too so that it hits my margins. Okay, it feels like it's a little bit far apart, so this I'm going to tighten up the leading. Okay. That's the rule. And then there's kind of the explanation of the rule. So I'm going to take all of this information and put that in a separate paragraph. That I'm actually putting in a text box. Whoop, that didn't, did I not copy it? Copy that. And now we're going to do a text box so it fits nicely in here. It always fills it with that other text. I don't like that, but anyway. And here, now I'm going to use a smaller so that it fits in here, all of it together. Let's see, maybe I'll actually pick like 36 point. It's a poster, so you want to be able to see it from far away, right? And so it's always good to have something really big that people can see from far away, something that it's like the second step down that explains things, and then they can read the rest of the text when they walk up to the poster because they think it's so cool, okay? Now, this has given me some hierarchy to begin with, but it's not super interesting, right? So what can I do? What are some things I can do to make this interesting, do you guys think? Some of the things, you know, maybe that are breaking some rules, or some of the things that we used in our invitations. Any ideas on what I can use? Maybe some color, right? Maybe some, yep, creating contrast. We have contrast in size. I can create some contrast in color. And then I can maybe just not have everything. Oh, this has some kind of weird character in here. I need to take that out. Okay. And then maybe I don't have to have everything on a horizontal line, right? Maybe I can do something interesting that way. Maybe I can do something interesting with the numbers and the letters of Rule 14, right? Like I can repeat it. I could change some of this right here. Here, for example, where it says set text entirely in uppercase letters can be hard to read. So maybe I take this and I go up here to type and I go to change case and I put all of that in uppercase. That way, that's an example of how that becomes kind of monotone. And uppercase letters can be successfully used to display type in larger. So maybe instead of this being lowercase, I also put this in uppercase. Okay, so now I've kind of used that rule a little bit in my text over here. I would probably go in here and play with the fonts that I'm using a little bit more. But let's see here, something else maybe I can do that's interesting. Rule number 4. Maybe we can use a 4 as kind of a design element. Let me go in here and find a font where 4 looks a little bit more interesting. Thought that wide one, it might be nice. Okay, let's use the Arial black. That makes it pretty big and chunky. And now I'm going to use the same technique that we used when we created our faces, and I'm going to create outlines out of that 4 so that I can kind of use it more as a shape, something interesting. And let's give it a color. So let's go with maybe some reds and oranges. And let's move that to the back so it's not. Come on. Let's move it to the back, send to back, Shift Command brackets. I use those a lot for a thing. And now it's time to just kind of play with things and not worry about grids or rules. And just kind of see how this 4 can maybe create some kind of interesting background shape. You guys can kind of see what happens when you abstract, or when you turn a shape. All of a sudden, this is going to be cut off right here. So now it becomes just kind of an interesting shape here in the background. And just to, so that it doesn't distract too much in the background from my text, maybe I will go in here and take the opacity of it down just a little bit. And maybe I'll also add a background square, or just a background color actually. Let's just do a background color over the whole background here. Something a little bit deeper, Shift Command bracket, whoops, to take it to the back, and it didn't do it. There we go, now it's in the background. And see how that, you know, that transparency kind of makes it overlap a little bit there. And if I take that transparency down a little bit too, then where I overlap it, it becomes kind of yet another shape. Maybe we change that color. Let's do that even a little bit lighter. All right, so you can see how now these shapes are kind of becoming, these fours are kind of becoming interesting shapes in the background. And maybe, you know, maybe now black is not the best color for my text. Maybe I change it to white, stands out even better, right? And maybe even this in white as well. Let's try all the text in white. Text doesn't have to be black, right? That kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. All right, so yeah, you know, these shapes can become something else. They can stay abstract. You can do all kinds of different things with it, and have it bleed over the edges if you want to, kind of think about how they interact with one another, and all of that kind of stuff. So this is just, again, one example, and I would, it's gonna look at it without the rules, so you can kind of see the edges right there. That makes me kind of want to have it go bleed over out the top as well. So I'm going to do that and save this. Okay, so now I'm saving my Illustrator one. Whoops, sorry. Okay, and we're going to save it as an Illustrator file. I took off my extension. I need to have that back on there, and save it right there in my folder. Okay, so yeah, so you could play around with this, take some time, maybe make a couple of different options if you want to compare it. If you have questions or you want help or ideas, you can come to the multi-sessions and I'll be glad to help you there. And then you're just going to save that PDF. And then remember, you can unselect the Illustrator editing capabilities. That's going to make the file a lot smaller. And I always put the view the PDF, and then remember, we don't want any marks and bleeds, so make sure that that's turned off, and then we'll save our PDF. Okay, here we go. So that was just a very quick version. This was the 10-minute version, and if you guys spend more time than 10 minutes on it, it would probably look even more you know, you could come up with some more interesting things. And when I look at it now, this bothers me. I wouldn't have this text kind of like touch right there. That bothers me. I would move it up and kind of align it with the bottom of that 4 a little bit more. I think that would be better. So you would have to kind of think about the shapes that this creates in the background when you're aligning your other text to it. Okay, any questions? I'll be glad to go over other ideas and things with you in the multi-session if you want to. And make sure that you upload to Behance. I'll put a video on how to upload things in Behance in the announcements, so if you have trouble with that. The multi-sessions, Thursday and Friday are regular times. Thursday between 5 and 7, Friday between 10 and noon. And I have some other little videos that I have recorded previously for this class where I'm making a pattern with the letters and numbers, rotating the grid, using transparencies, and also help with Behance. I can help you with any of those things in the multi-session if you want to, and I'll post these other little videos on some other techniques and ideas that you can use if you want to. We kind of already used a little transparencies just a little bit, right? All right, any other questions? All right, does it look like a fun project? Yeah, break the rules on this one, I would say. You're missing your opportunity to be creative with text if you are just kind of putting it as any other page, right? Take advantage of your creative freedom for this project. And if I were you, I would probably also go and do a little search, a little inspirational search. Typographic, okay? Just do a little image search on Google for typographic posters and start getting a little bit inspired, right? You can see some of these are using techniques, some of it are using, kind of things that you might not want to get into, but it's going to help you think outside the box a little bit, right? And notice how many of these have something that's really large on it. You can, that is always the best way and the simplest way to create interest is to have contrast in size. Remember that from the invitations as well. So something really big on there that's automatically going to make people notice things. And because of the font that you pick, if those letters are beautiful, it's going to make it something really interesting to look at. Yep, some of those showed how to morph the text, and I show you some tips on that in the pre-recorded session. If you want to try some of those, you can do that. Okay? So you have a lot of creative freedom in this final project. All right, Kevin's going to have fun. Sounds good. Right, if you have any questions, let me know during the week, and come to the multi-sessions, go to any of the other instructors' multi-session, or if you're having big problems with something, let me know and we can set up a time to meet as well. All right, good luck everyone. I mentioned that I have some other links that have some interesting resources about other things like hand lettering and all of that kind of stuff, and I'll put those links up in the announcements since we didn't have time to go over and look at them. But I hope you'll like it. It has some cool things about type and creative type in there. All right, have fun and stay safe from any storms, and I look forward to seeing your final projects. All right, bye for now.